Well, here we go. I think this probably goes without saying that there's going to be all kinds of spoilers for Game of Thrones. So if you haven't watched the whole thing and you're listening to this, don't be pissed at us. It's your own damn fault. Talking about Game of Thrones, and there's a couple different angles to go on. Your overall feel of the season, you know, when we talked about this before the final episode, people were pissed. They wanted rewrites. There's what did I see? It was a ridiculous amount of people have signed. I think it was over 1 million people have signed for HBO to redo season 8, which is not going to happen because of the amount of time and money that it would take to do it. That ain't happening.
It never happens. They try to do that for episode 1 for the Star Wars movie where people sign the petition about going back and rewriting the movies. It doesn't ever happen.
No, it's not going to happen. And how is this going to weather to this final season? Yeah, you still see some people even after the final episode that are complaining, but I was reading a review from the very first episode of Game of Thrones, going all the way back 8 years ago. And that first review was scathing from the New York Times. They were brutal on it. They said Playboy TV style plot points, costume drama, sexual hopscotch, stirs up a lot of confusion in the name of no larger relevant idea beyond fleshed out notions of war is ugly, families are insidious, and power is hot.
So that 4th episode, the one that everyone was annoyed with how boring it was, you know, after the big fight scene, the one thing I noticed, there was a good, I think 3 scenes in a row where you watch about just 15 minutes of people making out. And it wasn't much going on. It was very boring.
So your thoughts on the final season of Game of Thrones and your biggest problems with it. Mine, a couple things just... I still am like anything. It felt rushed. I think a lot of people say that. That's nothing new. Didn't like how quickly Daenerys turned from, we thought she was going to be some kind of heroine into somebody that was a villain. That just seemed to flip too quickly for me. And some people are like, well, the signs were there all along. But she went from killing people that probably deserved it to people that didn't.
But what they did, too, which I don't like, is for the entire for the entire show, you've got all of these storylines going on and all of these feuds of people who really don't like each other, that are trying to take each other down. And then in the last 2 episodes, they try to get you to get invested in this new feud with the Mother of Dragons against Jon Snow and against Tyrion, everybody. And it was too quick.
Yeah.
It was way too quick. Now, if you would have had her being upset and questioning Jon Snow and Tyrion and everybody, maybe even season before, I'll give you something. But 2 episodes and now, I'm like, oh my gosh, we're supposed to fear the Mother of Dragons. She might kill Jon Snow. She's so evil. That's
what people were complaining about. It felt too rushed considering you've spent 70 plus episodes, 8 years getting here. And HBO had even said they were hoping for more like 13 episodes of this. And I know they're arguing, saying, yeah, there's 6, but they're really long. Yeah, I think HBO said the same thing, where they're like, we just thought it should have been a little bit more time. And they even kind of alluded that it seemed like the 2 writers were running off to Star Wars.
Oh, they totally made the Night King go out like a bitch. I'm sorry, man. He goes out episode 3, and then the last 3 episodes, Night King's not even around.
Yeah, the one thing, and there were a couple things that, for me, there just could have been more. I think probably the best way is, actually after last night's finale, I felt a lot better about it after watching last night's finale and where it wound up than I had before the finale happened. But there's a lot of loose ends that I don't like with it. And you're right, the Night King thing was something for me. I wanted to see more. As ominous as he was, everything that was built up with that, and there were just too many loose ends, because I was even reading some stuff like, remember the people that created him? What was it, the Children of the Forest, or whatever the hell they were called? What was that all about? There were a bunch of prophecies. They had the whole thing where these bodies were arranged in a certain order. And that's when I really started to get into Game of Thrones, where I was like, wow, they have so much depth and meaning and all this kind of stuff. And there were these prophecies that were made and all that kind of stuff just really, okay, so it wasn't important?
Bran, the fucking cryptic that just kept on saying all this cryptic shit all season that didn't even make any sense. And he gets the He's the new
And
guy.
apparently he knew all along.
That's your guy.
Well-
This is who you're giving the ball to run with.
Well, and some people are complaining, saying, okay, so he didn't want to be the king of Winterfell, but he's okay with now being the ruler of the Six Kingdoms.
And that's your guy.
Yeah. So he didn't want that. Maybe that's why he was saying he didn't want Winterfell, because he knew there was a bigger nugget.
I'm sorry. You got someone like the Night King. You are hearing all of this shit about these creatures that are, I mean, they're unstoppable. You can't stop these creatures. For 8 seasons you're hearing, or 7 seasons, oh my gosh, the Night King, the Night King. They did the same thing with Snoke in Star Wars.
Well, there's
They
just
did
a
the
lot.
same exact thing.
It just seems now, after they've wrapped it up, you're like, okay, so going back and watching, like, okay, so that really meant nothing. There wasn't anything to that. Some of the questions people are going, we'd like to have some answers. Like, why had the Night King come for Bran so many times before? What was the significance of that?
And the Night King couldn't get him either. And why did when Arya grabbed the Night, when the Night King grabbed
her
Arya
by the throat?
How come she didn't die like everyone else does when the Night King?
Her eyes didn't turn blue. At least there wasn't a mark. Yeah, because Bran, even in the vision that he'd had where the Night King had grabbed his arm, it left a permanent mark on him, and the Night King knew where he was.
You're just gonna change the rules on me, baby.
Well, we didn't ever find out, like, what was their connection? What was the significance of that stuff? I mean, they even had some theories that Bran was going to be the Night King, and they were connected. So everybody really was excited about something deeper between those two and what was the connection, and we walk away from it having no idea. It just seemed like it was completely pointless.
People keep on saying, "Oh, y'all butt hurt," but every time you get invested in a character in Game of Thrones, they change. I've got nothing. I have no problem with changing the characters, but give them in a reasonable time to where it makes sense. Tyrion was a bitch the entire season. Season 8. He was nothing like he was before. Mother of Dragons, she did change. Jon Snow was such a bitch during season 8. My gosh, what happened to Jon Snow's balls?
I don't think that people were satisfied with what happened with Cersei either. And then, two, that was even kind of magnified last night, where Tyrion goes down in what you thought was a completely collapsed, cellar, basement, whatever it was, where they had the dragon skulls. And conveniently, the gold hand is sticking out of the rubble. So it looks like just a couple of bricks took out Cersei and Jaime. And not to mention, both of them still look gorgeous.
And then
even though
Tyrion finds them,
Yes.
coincidentally. The other one, the part that really, really annoyed me, and I thought it was so corny, and Thrones was never corny to me. It was in the last episode. Not 8. The 5th one, where Jaime Lannister and the guy that screws the queen. What's his name? I forget. The guy that he gets
Euron Greyjoy.
He gets blown out of the ocean.
Yeah.
Okay, he gets blown out. Now Jaime Lannister is trying to find the queen, and they both happen to meet up coincidentally as he's finding the trying to look for the queen, and then they get into a fight.
Just the timing of it.
It's lazy writing.
It was Game of Thrones in the 7 seasons that you'd watched it previously. It didn't have hokiness, didn't have corniness. It didn't seem like, oh, what a convenient. And I think that's why people feel like it was rushed, because the writers started leaning on convenient, laughable things you see in movies and TV shows where you're like going, okay. But in a lesser production, like if it's Back to the Future, you forgive the fact that Marty accidentally runs into whatever. You're like, oh, it's Back to the Future. But this, with Game of Thrones, I think you expected more because they hadn't gone to that. That's what made it feel rushed, was you saw things that were uncharacteristic.
I mean, I'm okay for Jon Snow being, thrown away out into nothing. It's just the way it happened is what I don't like. The way it was written. Yeah, banish him back to the wall. That's all good. That's all fine. But do it in a more I don't know. It was a shitty way to do it.
Where it all ended up, and here's what it seemed like happened. George R. Martin, or whatever the guy's name is that wrote the books, it sounded like after, I think it was season 3, 4, 5, somewhere around in there, they ran out of books. They had to go to the original writers, but he had given them a template. And it seemed like, okay, where it ended up, I'm ultimately okay with, but there are some questions I have before that. And that was always kind of the complaint I'd heard of the writer of the books and what the writers with the TV show were doing, was he was like, you're cutting out too much important stuff. And I have a feeling if he were here today and we were talking to him and he were being completely honest, he would say, yeah, there is some significance to what was going on with the Children of the Forest. There was significance to the bodies that the White Walkers were putting in that order. There was significance to all this kind of stuff, and the symbolism and the prophecies and all that kind of stuff. There was significance that they completely cut out of the TV show, which are going to be in the books.
Well, I like when you have characters that you're invested in and they get into these good dialogue type feuds. I wanted to see the Queen, Cersei, have another, with dialogue, a feud with the Mother of Dragons. Something where it's leading up, where they're basically calling each other names, and it's got some. I know you had that in season 7. I wanted it as a fan.
It's why you feel unsatisfied.
I wanted the Queen, both of the queens, to have a head-to-head moment where there's some dialogue together. Yeah. There's a couple of little quips, and you're like, "Oh shit, she just said that. Fuck." That's what I wanted.
All you got was Cersei standing up high on her perch and Dany down below. Yeah, it's just. I think the ultimate way to say is a lot of people were walking away unsatisfied because the potential that you had and the expectations that the first at least 5 seasons of Game of Thrones gave you, you were like, okay, this is going to be amazing. But it felt like it ended on a lesser quality level of show than the reason why you were so emotionally invested in this show in the first place.
And a couple questions. Why, after Jon Snow kills the Mother of Dragons, why does that dragon not fuck up Jon Snow? He looks at it, acts like he's going to blow him down with fire. Then he takes the Mother of Dragons and flies into the sky. Jon Snow just killed the Mother of Dragons, and you're going to let him off?
Yeah.
So he can go watch the wall that doesn't exist anymore?
The only thing that I thought with that, I do have some issues with that. The only thing that I thought is maybe there's something going on, because I know there was a connection between dragons and Targaryens. He recognized Jon was Targaryen, and maybe it's something in a dragon code that you can't blast a Targaryen regardless.
Well, you know what? I'm too dumb for that bullshit. Yeah. You got to spell it out for someone like me. You just killed the Mother of Dragons, and the dragon knows you did it. And you have a chance to fry Jon Snow, and even the dragon was a bitch. They turned the dragon into a bitch.
Yeah. And then you are kind of wondering, okay, where did the dragon go with the body? What's he going to do with it?
So the dragon lets Jon Snow go so he can go guard a wall that doesn't exist? What the shit, man?
Yeah. So a lot of people like the fact, at least, that Jon Snow pet his dog finally. And the excuse that they had given, where it didn't happen a couple of episodes ago, was a CGI thing.
Too expensive.
Too expensive, and people were laughing with that.
Y'all, if you are cheering about him petting a dog from the finale of the Game of Thrones, it's all gone. Just madly wrong.
Rach Lee said, I think it's because he's Valerian. So that was the issue maybe with, and I don't, like I said, I just, like, this season really started getting into some of the more nerd lore of
dragon
this,
knows
and a little bit more depth of it.
All right. Wow.
So maybe that's what it was, the reason why he didn't get blasted. And there might have been a reason. And somebody who knows more might say, here's why the dragon didn't blast Jon. Did the dragon really know that the Iron Throne is what basically was the undoing of it?
This is
was
one smart dragon, by the
Right.
way. And if this dragon was so damn smart, why wasn't this dragon making moves earlier? It's very convenient writing, and that's what people are annoyed with.
I think there's a lot of stuff that just felt rushed and it felt sloppy. And there were a lot of questions that it seemed like we put a lot of time, and you planted a lot, they call them Easter eggs or whatever now, where it's like you planted a lot of little things that you thought were going to turn into something later on, and you were excited about that. And it just never materialized, and then it kind of ended.
I even thought, Jaime Lannister was so sinister. I get he lost his hand, and he's a changed man. But I'm sorry, you're still evil if you're Jaime Lannister. You're not having sex with, I forget her name. What's her name?
Cersei?
No, not Cersei.
Bran?
Who?
Brienne?
Brienne of the Tarth.
Yes.
Yeah. That whole storyline, I thought that was whack.
Yeah.
Now they're making love. And
Metalbeard Dan brought up, and a lot of people have this too, sending Jon Snow to the wall makes no sense because the wall was to block the White Walkers that don't exist anymore. So you think. So, yeah, he was supposed to be there. He's not going to be with another woman again. But who exactly is going to police that? Who's going to police that Jon never marries or has kids?
He's Jon Snow. He's going to do whatever the fuck he wants to.
Ain't nobody going up north.
This guy just was eye to eye with the White Walkers.
Well, and in between where the people who are giving you this ruling is now Winterfell, and they're their own kingdom. So who's going to skip past Winterfell to go police Jon Snow?
It's the dumbest shit. His sisters are sending him away. Why don't they just...
You're not allowed to ever... Wait, what?
Why don't they... It was so dumb. And then you got motherfuckers leaving water bottles by their foot.
Yeah, it seemed rushed and it seemed lazy. You didn't see those kind of things popping up in earlier seasons, and I think that's where a lot of this, the probably necessary criticism is happening for the final season of Game of Thrones.
Hated how Jaime Lannister died. Hated how Cersei died. Hated how I wouldn't say I hated. I mean, it's kind of cool that Snow killed her, I guess, because it's a twist. There's a murder there.
Yeah,
but then everything that followed that immediately sucked.
You know, the funny thing about that is even people said that was symbolic of the whole final season because she died quickly. Like,
I didn't even know what happened until I'm like, wait, did he just stab her?
Yes, and then she's dead in about 5 seconds, and people are like going, just like the damn series.
It's almost
in
like
the final season, she's dead too quickly.
It's almost like they were editing that scene, and they're like, shit, is this the only take we have of it? We gotta use it. Okay, you didn't even see it happen.
Yeah, I did. There were a lot, and I think that's ultimately the way it is. Now, the question is, how would you have rewritten it? What would you have done? And we talked a little bit about having the Night King be more involved. I at least answer to me all the things about, the children of the forest, what's going on there, what the connection was with he and Bran. Go a little bit more into that.
I wanted a bloodbath with more of the main characters. I thought the Night King should have taken out more main characters.
I thought he should have been more of a threat. And you know what?
Yes.
I thought the Night King should have made it to King's Landing.
I agree.
Because when Cersei didn't do that, there should have been a face-to-face, and she's like, oh, no, look at what I've done here. Here's the Night King. I totally ignored
and it's
that.
Such potential of showdowns within King's Landing.
You see the army of the dead coming at Cersei, and now she has legitimate fear.
Arya comes in and even whether Arya kills the queen or not, they at least had a moment together where Arya gets to speak her mind to the queen, who is, that's why she's been going.
I wanted to see her again do the whole disguise thing, and maybe they thought that would have been hokey to have, it's Arya again with another fake mask on. But I loved that in last season.
I would have written more dialogue stuff of just badass, oh yeah, mother, just that kind of stuff where people were in each other's face a little bit more.
Well, that's the kind of stuff that adds the layers. That's what really gets people involved.
I mean, the part where they're talking about who's going to take the throne, first, about 20 minutes long, it felt like.
Too much.
And it was not very good. And then Bran gets the throne. Didn't even want that shit.
Yeah. Here are some of the questions that people are still saying, okay, I still would like to know the answer. Where did Arya's horse go? Remember the horse? It was so significant, and people were like, what is the That was the whole thing. People were breaking, and that's just what it was. Game of Thrones conditioned you to try to break down the symbolism of the show, and the final season showed you that the symbolism doesn't mean crap, and you're wasting your time. And in a sense, that's, I think, what it was to all the people who really got into the show. Like, I did this final season to try to break down all the symbolism and realize, that doesn't mean anything. We're just trying to wrap this thing up so we can move on to Star Wars. That's what it felt like, because people are like going, what is this? Is this, mean that she's going to be the rider of death and blah, blah, blah? No, it doesn't mean anything. It just meant that she took off on a horse and tied it up to a tree somewhere.
Couple cool things I will say I did like. I like the fact that Arya's going out west, kind of setting up a possible sequel of some sort.
Like I said, I think if the George R. R. Martin was the guy who gave them the ending, said, hey, here's where I see it wrapping up, the way it wrapped up and where everybody went, I'm actually like, okay.
I'm against 90% of it. I would say Arya is the only storyline that I could agree on.
I was okay because Jon Snow didn't want it. I was okay with him.
You're okay with him going back to a wall that doesn't exist?
I don't like that he went to a wall that doesn't exist, but him, for whatever reason, a different motive to wind up back up north. I think that's where his heart was. That's where he truly wanted to be.
And you trying to tell me,
I was cool with Jon Snow winding up back there.
Jon Snow.
And I think it might have been contrived if they had somehow tried to make him the king.
He's been with that hot redhead, and he's been with the mother of dragons. You mean to tell me that guy's just going to shut it off, and he's never going to get laid again? Bullshit.
Oh, I know. That line was stupid. Well, that I would take that out. Like, he can go and he can bang all the wildlings.
He's Jon Snow. He's earned it.
That was stupid.
Dumb.
Yeah, I didn't like that. But him winding up there, I was fine with. Sansa winding up king of the Queen of the North and taking that territory, I was okay. Bran, okay. I'm okay with that.
He was comical at his character this season. They made him so over. He was like...
and then he actually seemed to get a little bit of a personality and a sense of humor in the final episode.
Yeah, he was like Yoda in episode 1 or 2, where everything was just, cryptic, yes. Like, everything was so fucking cryptic. Sorry to swear so much. I wasn't sure if this was a swearing podcast.
No, you can go for it, whatever you want to do.
I've dropped about 5 F-bombs.
Yeah. Meredith's pointing out, well, technically Jon Snow left with the free folk. He's not at the wall. And yeah, he did. And I think that was him, apparently what had happened was, him going out. If you look at the first episode ever of Game of Thrones, it was kind of like coming in from the woods up north, and then it
so
it ends
artistic,
with,
Kevin.
Yeah, I mean there were a few things. It feels like at the end, like okay, we maybe did what we should have done at the very end of the episode, but then just there was a bunch of slop that got us to there.
Everyone's yelling at me. No, I get it. Yes, I do know that he is leaving the wall and he's going into the woods with the people. I'm just saying, he was going back to the wall. That's basically what he was banished to, that area, the north.
Mm-hmm.
And he went as a criminal too. So,
yeah. Like I said, though, I mean, with a lot of it, I was okay with how it all went down. If it had been better, I wanted a better episode 4 or 5 getting you there.
And I know you love the war scene. On episode 3, I didn't love episode 3 like everyone else did.
Yeah, I thought it was really good, but yeah, I was really expecting 4 and 5 to really we're going to take off from here, and then I'm going to get some explanations, all that kind of stuff. And then when it didn't happen, I really don't know why they did the whole thing with Brienne and Jaime Lannister.
Dumb.
That just seemed like a schmaltzy, pointless, and that was just it. It really started to emphasize they had done a lot of things that were pointless. Their whole relationship and him knighting her and this and that.
That was some of the dumbest shit.
Yeah.
By the way, you could have wrapped that up in about 20 seconds.
Well, if they're pressed for time, don't spend your time on that.
We don't give a shit if he knights her.
Right. That we didn't
don't
need.
care.
And remember how I said, like, I felt like, I think it was episode 2, they were just sitting around a fire forever, and people were like, oh, no, they're getting into the depth of the character. I'm like, that's all fine and good, but you wasted too much time in episode 2, and you didn't handle the stuff that all these questions I'm bringing up handle these. Like, I didn't need 2, I didn't need 4.
We wanted to see her fight and swing the sword, damn it. That's what we wanted from Brianna of Tarth.
Yeah.
Don't you want to see that as a fan?
Yeah.
You can develop her character, make her a person.
Cersei needed to die better.
Cersei went out like they all went out like Boba Fett in Return of the Jedi. Weak as shit.
Mm-hmm. Some of the questions still pressing. Some people asking here. We got some comments coming in. Okay. Yeah, why didn't the Drogon kill Jon? Can Jon still control the dragon? Can he warble into the dragon, and is there still control over it? The dragon just kind of like took off. I guess he can maybe figure out where it is.
Dragon's just going to clear his head.
Yeah, he's like,
spring break.
Well, he's been through a lot, poor guy. His mom's dead. His 2 brothers are dead.
If he's such a smart dragon, as we're learning he is, or she is, then yeah, a lot of heavy thinking for that dragon.
Mm-hmm. Let me see. Is Jon a full-on wildling now? I guess so. I guess that's kind of it. I mean, the first woman that he loved, she was a wildling, and
she was hot.
He married her in real life.
Good move.
There was a couple relationships that had happened. The woman who played Cersei, Lena Headey, and the guy who played Bran, apparently were a couple in real life and had a horrible breakup. And they never, I guess, were in the same scene together. And they said that they kept everything a secret, but it was very turbulent and very awkward on the set. She appears to have a genuine hate towards him. And so they never appeared in the same scene together. And I guess that was the reason why, due to the real life drama. Cersei and Bran never in the same scene. I was like, okay. Fascinating stuff.
Cersei and Bran?
That's what the Sun tabloid had said. Do you can you think of a scene where they were in it together?
I'm trying to think of who Bran is again.
Bran is the guy who wound up ruling Highgarden. He was the guy that hung out with Tyrion for a while and Jaime for a while.
Oh, yeah, that guy's pretty cool.
Yeah, he was at the end. He
He's
was arguing
dicky.
for brothels.
He's dicky, but all of a sudden he's in the council now, huh?
Mm-hmm.
That guy's he's on the council?
Yeah, he's on the council. He's now of high standing. People wondering with Arya, what is she like, the Christopher Columbus of Westeros? And how does nobody know what's west of Westeros at this point in time?
Well, I think that was their attempt of possibly setting up, if they want to do another whatever with it.
Are there any flat earthers in Westeros, and will she just sail off of the map?
I don't know. I mean, that's honestly an ending that wouldn't shock me.
That would have been a great like Monty Python type ending. They show Arya and she actually sails off of the flat earth.
My whole thing was I I liked how the evil people were evil characters, and they always stayed evil. And all of a sudden, they were trying to make you feel bad for Cersei and Jaime, like they're this lovable, incestuous couple. Oh, they're in love. He's trying to get to his queen.
Well, to spend 7 seasons, you spent 7 seasons loving Daenerys, 7 seasons hating those two, and then all of a sudden, in the snap of a finger, they wanted you to flip your emotions, and that's what a lot of people had a problem with.
That's not the kind of twist people like. So the Red Wedding was good because it was good writing, and you were shocked, and you were like, oh my gosh. This was just shocking because it was shitty writing. Mm-hmm. It shocked you in that twist, but it's just like they did with The Last Jedi. They shocked you into a very kind of boring twist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, somebody said freaking Jaime Lannister gets stabbed 2 or 3 times, then runs through the castle and gets to Cersei, but Dany dies with just 1 stab wound.
And by the way,
maybe it's where it was.
And then Tyrion he's going through all this rubble. Keep in mind, everything's been destroyed, and Tyrion gets in there and finds them laying perfectly together after moving 3 rocks.
Yeah.
Very convenient.
Mm-hmm. So we had some people here with their thoughts. Madison had sent this in. She is not a big fan of how it went on. She said the final season. Fuck DB Weiss and David Benioff for ruining the greatest show of all time. They had gold in their hands and they threw it away, yet for another Star Wars letdown. I wasted only 8 years of my time, but also money to watch HBO while I'm down in the Bahamas working. So a malarkey of a season, doesn't like it, blah, blah, blah.
Michelle Hallstein in the chat room says, you guys just want to complain. Well, no, I just... That's the thing too.
No, I think it's just to me it's disgusting. Like I said, at the end of it, I'm okay with it. I don't like how we got there, and then I still have these questions where it's like, if we spent any time on the show at all, I felt like in the final season they spent time on stuff that we didn't need, and they should have spent time on stuff that we did. And that is my biggest thing of walking away. There's just a lot of loopholes where you're like, okay, what is the answer to this? That I don't get. I want to know a little bit more. The Children of the Forest. I want to know what was going on with Bran and the Night King.
And look, man, when you have this many people upset about it, clearly they missed the mark. Are you trying to piss off your fans, or do you want to make them happy? I mean, you can make your fans feel different emotions, but if it's a letdown from a big majority of your fans, like the last Star Wars movie, and I'm not talking about the Solo, I'm talking about Last Jedi, you missed the mark. And that's not people being toxic. That's not people trying to keep anybody down. That's just people giving their opinion about shitty writing.
Mm-hmm. Somebody said, where's the Dothraki going to live now? Are they going back? Because the Unsullied are taking off and they're heading to where Missandei's home was.
That was the other thing too. You've got all these people on the council now, or whatever, that like Tyrion, that don't want him to die, and you've got the one guy say, no, he's gonna die.
Grey Worm.
Yeah, why don't they just kill Grey Worm right there? They have 11 verse 1.
Yeah, he doesn't know. I guess the only thing is he controls the Unsullied, so he does kind of run the army. So I guess it would be his power.
Kill their main guy.
Yeah.
Now they don't have a leader.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they think they would. I don't know. Kill everybody there. Some of the comments we got, Engineer Keith said, it's as if they pulled the audience and asked, what would make you happy to see in the final episode? And then they wrote everything to the contrary. Like, what the fuck?
That's exactly what it felt. That's a great comment.
Nothing cool happened. It was pretty predictable, actually. Although I did expect Tyrion to be an extra crispy Tyrion McNugget. Arya learned face swapping so she could wipe out the phrase, and that's it. I mean, I guess it made her capable of killing the Night King, but WTF. Yeah, that's why I said I felt like the face swapping, I would have loved to have seen that somewhere and have it be important in the final season. I want to be more mad that Jon's not the king, but it kind of makes sense. Yeah, I'm okay with that too. Jon never wanted it, and they want to break the cycle of birthright tyranny. I'm cool with that. That being said, the people who are upset with Jon sail to another continent at the end. If they're not going to insist on killing him, then what does Westeros care about the hurt feelings of some dudes across the sea? So dumb. That's what I'm saying. Who's enforcing this?
Exactly.
And on the topic of breaking the wheel, all they've done is start a different one. So we've solved the cycle of butt-hurt houses, but wait a minute. If all the voting members of the Council of Kings are systematically coerced, what's the point? Is this supposed to be some kind of allegory? As long as men are not in charge of their own destinies, tyranny will reign, ? After Jon stabs his once lover, just kidding, it's my aunt, I expected the dragon to be pissed. I was thinking, oh, wouldn't it be cool if Drogon lit her up and she came back to life? Or what if Drogon lights Jon up and some weird Targaryen magic shit goes down? Or what if now Jon can claim the dragon and fuck up the Unsullied? Now they take him prisoner. Wait, what? You mean to tell me that Grey Worm doesn't gut him on the spot? Well, now that's proof that he has no genitals physically nor in spirit. And people are asking, too, how did they know that he stabbed Daenerys in the heart?
They have cameras. I'm kidding. The dragon told them, because the dragon's so
the dragon
smart.
takes off. Did he say, did Jon be like,
I killed her. I killed her.
I stabbed her in the heart, and then the dragon flew off
That's
with
probably
her?
just what Jon Snow
And
would
then
do.
they'd be like going, wait, you did what?
Jon, don't tell us. You can still have sex with women. If you don't tell us, you can chill here. Life can be really good for you.
Yeah, so that was Engineer Keith's thoughts on it.
They should have killed Grey Worm when they had a chance. Why would you not kill Grey Worm right then and there?
Britt, it said, I love the idea that you give a list of what would you have done in terms of changes to Game of Thrones for your Game of Thrones podcast. In episode 3, we should have had deaths of some more major characters. If Brienne's last shot of the series is crying over Jaime, I'm going to nerd rage. Bran could have died a noble death protecting Jaime against the dead during the Long Night episode and would have died with dignity. Her arc was already complete with her becoming a knight. Yeah, and then it was very unsatisfactory.
Oh my gosh. That did not seem like a finale. That seemed like an episode 2 of season 1 is what that felt like.
Other characters like Sam and Tormund also should have died because it seems like there was no other use of them.
I am so mad that Sam lived. You mean to tell me Sam escaped 11 White Walkers? Kevin, they had to rip White Walkers off of him. How does Sam survive?
Yeah.
That's bullshit.
Somehow he did.
Oh, that's
Because
bullshit.
he still had destiny. Yes. Another question. Whatever happened to the cities that Dany liberated in the east?
I think no one gives a shit.
Yeah. Number 2, I, for one, think some main people should have retreated through the crypts and had episode 4 follow into confronting Cersei with this truth, and then the 5th episode being the final confrontation with the Night King.
I agree.
Would have made it less lame of the Night King only making it to Winterfell after 8,000 years of preparation, and would have solidified the threat. Yeah, I agree. The Night King needed to get the Army of the Dead to King's Landing.
The Night King should have had more of some shine towards the end. That'd be one of the things I would fix as well.
Mm-hmm.
And can someone? No one's been able to explain this to me. Why did Arya not get screwed up by the Night King when he touched her? He grabbed her.
Yeah, when he touched that baby.
Nobody can explain that to me. It's almost like it doesn't. They're breaking the rules on me.
It's not computing, yeah, because everybody else he touches turns into a White Walker, but he has her by the throat.
No one else in the chat room. Tell me why this has gone on, please.
Let me see. Her point 3 here is she said if they were to have the Night King die in episode 3, then they should have at least given us some fan service in terms of Jon fighting the Night King. Jon being brought back from the dead has basically become a moot plot point during this season. I guess he was brought back to take out Daenerys. I guess
so
ultimately,
dumb.
and that's the only, because I did have that same question. I'm like, I guess that's why the Lord of Light brought him back, was so that he could wipe out the tyranny that Daenerys was going to bring.
And by the way, Daenerys she was feeling horny. They were about to have sex, and that's when he stabbed her.
No, she thought
She
she was going
was-
to get stabbed with something else.
She did.
If we actually saw him battle the Night King and almost die, to then have Arya come in with the final blow, they could have still kept the whole Arya's sneaky point while ending the Night King in a more satisfying way. It also would fit within.
I mean, I loved how evil Queen Cersei was. I mean, she was awesome at being so evil. How are you going to punk her out like that? A building?
Yeah. It would have been pretty amazing.
Tyrion finds Jaime Lannister, his gold arm.
Well, and I was
So
hoping
corny, Kevin.
hoping the crossbow was going to play more of a part in that, because the crossbow that Bronn has, where it's like, hey, I want you to shoot either one of them. I'm like, that would be great if that somehow comes back and gets Cersei. Maybe that could have a better point. But all it was Bronn showed up with it later and pointed at Jaime and Tyrion and used it to threaten them. But I thought when she first handed that out, I'm like, that's going to come back, and that will probably be what takes her out somehow. That would have been more satisfying to me. Yeah, the rubble did not like. Nobody likes anything about
That's
that.
one of my favorite things in movies in general. When you got two people that are at odds, and the confrontation, the good dialogue between that's what I love.
Right.
Seeing people have their little zingers. That's the best stuff. And then lead into a fight.
So that's a lot of what she says, yes, and hers. So, yeah, that's the big question. People will probably debate what it should have been.
Someone in the chat room said she had a Valyrian steel heart. Well, what the shit does that even mean?
Well, I think that's the dagger she had. So holding the dagger in her hand, which actually she did drop for a second as she readjusted hands. He still had his hand around her throat. That's the only thing I can get. Yeah, Valyrian steel heart, if that's something, I don't remember them explaining that in the TV show.
It's like when in Han's, the Solo movie, they had things from the cartoon that they put into the movie, but if you didn't watch the cartoon, you had no idea what the shit was going on. If I'm not reading every little thing, how do I know she's got?
Yeah, somebody I think is trying to say the Valyrian steel conveys protection, but like I said, it left her hand for a second when it dropped, and she dropped it from one hand to the next before she stabbed the Night King.
It's weak.
So there should have been something in there, and that feels like that's stretching.
And where does she come from? Out of the blue?
Yeah, I'm okay, I guess, with I guess how sneaky she was, I guess. I mean, it was just remember the wind blew the White Walker's hair up and like, wait, what's going on?
Man, I thought these White Walkers were supposed to be good. I thought they were good.
My question is...
They really choke under pressure, I can tell you that much.
After what, and this would be the question I think for a lot of people, like going, okay, hey, you saw Game of Thrones, I've never seen it. Is it worth jumping in,
Yes.
76 episodes?
Absolutely.
Worth to watch the whole thing to where it's going to end up?
I mean, this isn't anything that's going to wreck your life because you're upset. I'd go in there and have some fun with it.
Yeah, I think so too. Ultimately, I would still watch it. It was still great. It's just disappointing that when I really got into Game of Thrones this season, that's what was most disappointing to me, was I really started reading the fan blogs and say, wow, there's a lot more depth to this show that I'd kind of missed, and I was looking forward to resolution to all those amazing points and those little, wow, that's kind of cool. I missed that the first time around, and then I got to the end of it, and they didn't handle the little things that I was wanting to know about. Who was the Night King? That's one of the questions. People are like, who was the guy that was the Night King before? People were hoping that, is he a Targaryen? Was he a Stark? Who was this guy that they just randomly grabbed? Apparently now he was just a random guy that they just saw walking on a path in the woods. What did the children of the forest grab?
People get mad when there's a betrayal of the character. When you are used to a character that all of a sudden something's being written, it's either a boring storyline where you're like, why are they wasting this awesome character with the, like, why would you? Jaime Lannister was such an awesome character. He was a badass. You could have even made him a more of a badass after you lost his hand. He could have turned, if you want to have a change of heart, he could have had a change of heart, still be a better guy, and still be a badass. And he wasn't. He was kind of a pussy.
Yeah, that's...
He's not... I'm sorry, Jaime Lannister's not... He's the kind of guy that even if he loses his hand, he's not going to be a pussy. I'm sorry. I don't see it happening. And that's what they did to him.
It just didn't seem like that storyline went anywhere. At the end of it, you're like, why did we even go that route? Like, what was the point of that?
It did not go anywhere. You're right. The last 3 seasons with Jaime Lannister has been shit, and they could have done so much more with him.
No, that's what people argue.
This is the guy who pushed off Bran.
Yeah.
Is it Bran?
Yeah.
Yeah, push
now
off Bran.
winds up being a king, yeah.
You're evil. You pushed a kid off of the ledge. Mm-hmm. Now all of a sudden you're making sweet love.
People are like, why do we have that storyline where he was changing his heart and he's becoming a different person? And, we can all get that. Like, there's growth. And then all of a sudden you just in an instant revert back to what you were. And I guess they're saying it was the pull of love.
You take his hand, then you take his balls too?
Yeah. So there you go. Anyway, so that is... Any other final thoughts that you have about Game of Thrones before we put this thing forever to bed? And just say, okay, it was a pretty good TV show that ended questionably.
Well, you know what? The new Star Wars franchise deserves this because it's got the same type of feel as The Last Jedi. I get that the younger generation may like the Last Jedi, but people who have been there since day one, they're mad because it's a betrayal of character. Your shitty ass writing is why people are mad, not because they're old and bitter because your shitty ass writing.
Yeah, well, there's going to be a lot of pressure on these two guys.
Oh my God.
Coming into this because Game of Thrones fans will be watching closely. Star Wars fans will be watching closely.
Do you know why I loved Rogue One in Star Wars? Because they gave the fans what they wanted. They gave you a 3.5-minute scene of Darth Vader being such a badass, and it just was...
I just want a little bit Yeah.
It was satisfying
It
to
was good,
people
yeah.
who
It was
have
amazing.
been there. You could have done that. You could have done that in Game of Thrones, and you could have done that with The Last Jedi. You can make your fans happy and still twist their mind.
You don't compromise the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it just felt like they missed a lot of potential. So we'll see what happens with that. Some people love it, some people hate it, but probably what the good thing is for Game of Thrones, people will continue to debate, was it good or not? All right, nerddom out.
That was fun.